Jarvis, drop my needle.
Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and if you are interested in listening to idiots, you came to the right place. Have a nice day.
Woo! That's an attention getter.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot. What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law.
Oh my God, he's an idiot.
You know, of course, that you're out of your jurisdiction.
Personally, I think you're an idiot.
But that's the evidence in the car.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Always like to keep my audience riveted.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fiends, and welcome to Free Range Idiocy, the podcast about everything, but mostly just the stuff we like. When it comes to quality and opinion, no mixed bag is more of a mixed bag than the Star Wars mixed bag. Whether you're talking about the varying opinions about the quality of the most recent trilogy, the unabashed revisionist history of opinions surrounding the prequel trilogy, and yes, I see all of you out there who say that The Phantom Menace really wasn't that bad. I see you. We know.
Do it.
The excellence of Rogue One and The Mandalorian, or however folks feel about Solo this particular week, is a total mess. So when Andor was announced, we were optimistic but also bracing for the punch to the gut and other regions, let's be honest. Now we're just over halfway through the first season, and it's time to hand out our assessment of the latest Star Wars offering in this episode 116 Andor Mid-Season Review.
Do it.
I am your Uncle Todd, and with me, as always, is the man who has been undercover in the rebellion for years, only it's a rebellion against all carbs, and he has a T-bone steak in his holster instead of a plaster. He has been my partner in Idiocy for over 2 decades, and his Star Wars geek cred is unimpeachable, I tell you. I give you the man they call Tim.
Greetings and salutations, my friend. How are you?
I'm all right. I definitely did not time my breaths right, and I damn near passed out.
I was going to say, is Patrick going to have to pick you up there, resuscitate you, or?
Well, as a matter of fact, Patrick will not, because I'm recording this evening in my new study at our new house.
Who's bougie now, mister?
Oh, don't even give me that. This is nothing compared to your palatial manor house in the suburbs of Chicago. This is just a room that I can close a couple doors in, but it is nice. So there shall be no Patrick, because I haven't told him what my new address is. That's the other part of this. Don't need to have him tracking me down and coming knocking at the door. It's bad enough I've got him living like Harry Potter under the stairs in my broom closet at the office. Goodness. I don't need Patrick showing up here.
Are you afraid of going back to HQ at some point and him pulling a Goodwill Hunting on you, just not being there, and you just having a smile on your face like, finally?
You know, I have thought about that. You know, I'm wondering how I'd feel about that, because on one hand, yes, I'd be very happy. I'd walk away, and the only thing
would
is
be Chucky at that point.
I know, and then but I don't have a Morgan to get bumped up to the others to the front seat. You know,
that's true.
But on the other hand, it's like I would actually miss the guy. It was sort of like when we used to have this really dumb dog, and we got to a point where we after we unfortunately had to put him to sleep, and which is horrible, but it was also the best thing for him. And we realized we could leave food out in the counter. And our other dog was so the opposite, such a good dog, wouldn't even think about it. I think in her life, 3 times she tried to get it some food on the counter in 12 years. Something like that. It was just outrageously good. And the times that she did, she would always be like, man, should be better than that. You could tell she was beating herself up over the fact that she just did that, and it was sort of that same sort of thing. I think it'd be that deal. You're glad on one hand, but then you have that mixed emotion. So I don't know, but every day I go in there's something new added. So he's getting awfully comfortable. Real comfortable with this living situation. And like I said before, I'm pretty sure if we ever move HQ, the new tenants are going to inherit Patrick. I don't think he's going anywhere. He is firmly ensconced in his new habitat, shall we say. He's an invasive species of a kind, I guess you could say.
Oh, good Lord.
He's like one of those plants that shouldn't have been there, and now it's growing into everything.
Yeah.
That's Patrick at HQ.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
But aside from that, everything is going well.
Good. Well, that is good, and kudos and thank you for introducing the word unimpeachable into the introduction when it comes to my Star Wars cred. I much appreciate that.
Well, I try and do what I can to, just to level you up, sir.
Well,
that's what I'm here for.
I always appreciate a little up leveling.
I'm a booster. Well, we've got a whole lot of Andor to talk about. I didn't realize Andor was going to be 12 episodes for the first season. That kind of like threw me. I'm so used to like the Marvel, like 7 or 8. I mean, actually now they're down to 7. I think it started out at 8, and now seems like now we're getting down to 7. Like that's the new number of episodes. So I was fully prepared for like, okay, and this is the end of season 1. I'm like, oh no, there's 12 of these things. Wow. Okay. So we're just over halfway through the first season, and there is going to be a season 2. I guess they're actually starting to shoot next month, November, and then we'll get it on the Plus in 2023, I believe.
It's like the anti-Mandalorian.
Yeah,
Mando.
It is kind of weird.
You got the season 1 finale. It's like season 2 in 2 weeks. It's like, wow.
They all hate you, Mando.
Yeah, it's actually, you know what it's like Westworld. Like you're gonna have to go back and refresh yourself on everything that happened because it'll have been so long, and you'll have no idea. But we're going to give our thoughts on that. However, before we get into that, we have some bits and bobs of trivia and other news that we have to get into. So, what do we got for this episode's Week in Geek, sir?
Week in Geek.
Feels so funky.
Well, we have first up on the docket. Actually, this week's Week in Geek is going to be a little more combat sports oriented, if you know what I mean. And by combat sports, I will first delve into the world of professional wrestling. We have a return that has been bandied and ballyhooed about for quite some time, that has come to pass over the last couple of weeks.
Just use ballyhoo as a verb?
I did. I decided you inspired me with unimpeachable, so I decided
That's pretty impressive. I would have thought to do that.
Well, thank you.
How does one ballyhoo? And can you get arrested for it if you do it wrong? I guess the other. Like indecent exposure and ballyhooing in public is
quite possibly.
Anyways,
but
it actually does sound like something you would have gotten arrested for, like in the 1920s.
That's true. They threw me in the slammer because I was ballyhooing too much.
Yeah. Excessive ballyhooing. Without a permit.
But now that we are in the Triple H era of booking and talent, as we see things, we are in a phase right now. I wouldn't call it rebuilding, but I would say it is a phase of surprises and returns. And for those who are uninitiated, Bray Wyatt is probably, as we have spoken on the show very highly of in past episodes, probably one of the most creative minds when it comes to talent that has come through the hallowed halls of WWE in quite some time. I kind of think of him in many ways as a Jake the Snake, kind of a version of Jake the Snake now, both in character, but also from what I've read of him in terms of the sort of creative input that he has. Jake
just
was
a lot less crack involved.
Yes, I mean Jake was known for crafting very, very good promos and to the point of, I forget if this was in Mick Foley's book or a different wrestler's biography, but I remember someone talking about how they looked at Jake as kind of the standard when it came to promos, because he would even play with the volume of his voice. When he would deliver a promo, he would talk very quietly, and you would tell the wrestler, he would say, I did that because I want the person listening to crawl up to their TV and try to hear what I'm saying. Like, I want their focus. So I'm going to be as quiet as I can be, and then raise, amp it up from there. And Wyatt has always been kind of that sort of character, maybe not exactly in that way, but in terms of the way he has presented himself, the way he has kind of carried his character. And so,
I would like to add on to that. To me, he strikes me as, I think you're totally right in the Jake the Snake. aspect of that. He also reminds me, if you manage to crossbreed, which, and this is a terrifying abomination that should never even be considered in any way, shape,
I'm sure
or form.
Bray's listening.
But if you were able to crossbreed Jake the Snake's kind of promo and kind of that darker aspect, because that was always kind of the direction he headed, with just the mile a minute creativity of a Paul Heyman.
Yes.
Of just being able to churn out ideas. If you took those two and mashed them together, which, again, a frightening combination if you just imagining those two people like put together. But that's kind of what he reminds me of, because apparently he also it's a sort of thing, I think even Triple H had mentioned it, if you can just harness that and steer it in a direction, but he can have this whole thing of like, then the next day he's like, forget everything I just said, let's do this thing.
Yeah
It's like, wait, I'm still thinking about what you told me yesterday.
Right, exactly. So and he's been through a couple incarnations, first as the leader of the Wyatt family, and then when he was summarily jobbed out and just not dealt with the right way under the Vince era, he reinvented himself, and he came back as the Fiend, and not just coming back as the Fiend, but coming back as a character who would wear this mask that was more than just a mask. Like, it was actually, it seemed to be the sort of prosthetic that was like things he would do with his face would come through in the mask, so it seemed very, lifelike, like, there was a person underneath it. I'm not trying to say like it was so convincing and you're like, oh dear God, but it came across when he first debuted, and I think for the first, I want to say 4 to 6 months of his run, was just this enigma, and this, the crowd loved it because it was just so different, and the presentation was so different.
Yeah. But unlike other masks where it really hides a lot,
right? It
managed to actually accentuate, and he did a fantastic job of using his own body language.
Oh,
and almost in a way of oh my gosh, Hugo Weaving, when he did V for Vendetta.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
With a mask that is totally just neutral.
Yeah,
he then had to accentuate everything else that he was doing in terms of like little motions with his head and the way he would hold his head and things like that.
Right,
exactly the kind of the same thing that Bray Wyatt would do. So it did, and then just that visual put it over the top. It was genuinely creepy.
Yeah. And he went on a pretty good run with that, and took and of course that was when the Firefly Funhouse piece came out, where it was kind of like this really dark spin on kind of like a children's program that was really kind of darkly driven, and just really well done. But again, over time, he was misused. Probably, I think a lot of fans would point to, I believe it was an event in Saudi Arabia where Goldberg defeated The Fiend for, I think it was the Universal title or the WWE title, one of those two. But just once that happened, it not that it was all downhill from there, but I think there was a lot of faith lost by hardcore fans in Vince properly using this great character that Wyatt came up with. And so as time went on, I think his last match was against Randy Orton, not at this year's WrestleMania, but last year's, and then I think he was let go.
Which was very surprising. But it's one of those things that towards the end of the Vince tenure, there was very little that was surprising, because it was just like a absolute cluster.
Yeah, I mean,
that's before you get to any of the allegations, which are horrible enough in and of themselves.
Right. Well, and again, to Wyatt's credit, I mean, he took someone like Alexa Bliss, who creative, I don't think knew really what to do with, and leading up to that WrestleMania match, they basically turned her into kind of a, like a female, I don't want to call it disciple, but basically they transformed her into being almost like this henchman of his. With The Fiend, and again, totally creative, totally different, great presentation for her, and she, and I've read about her that she, much like Wyatt in real life, is a fan of horror, and so she really kind of embraced what she was doing as this sort of brainwashed kind of henchman of his. to the point where they did this weird thing at WrestleMania last year where she turns on him. And that was kind of the last time we saw the character. He basically turns on the Fiend, and Randy Orton wins the match, and that kind of ended the feud. And then like a month later, WWE just releases him.
Yeah.
Which was insane and still is insane, to think about because of the potential. But he's basically just been, kind of inactive since then. And so as Triple H takes over now, and we see that he's starting to bring back a lot of the talent that was let go, because he has a very different perspective on, I think, their potential and what they can do. It was rumored and thought, well, hey, maybe this is the opportunity for Bray Wyatt to be brought back. And so there started to be some these montages that I just saw called the White Rabbit, teases or something like that. There was this like creepy character with a white mask on who would, say some things or whatever, but it was all leading up to the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, which happened a couple weeks ago. And it was there that we see basically after the final match, basically the arena goes dark, and they start to play He's Got the Whole World in His Hands, which has always been there's always been a creepy version of the song associated with Bray Wyatt. So that was kind of the first sign for the crowd. And then you see like different characters from the Firefly Funhouse, although not, in TV form, but in actual like physical form, being zoomed in on in the crowd. And then there's this door that lights up, and I'm going to cut through a lot of the drama, but door opens, kind of zooms in, and you see this person holding a lantern, which has always been kind of the signature, thing for Bray Wyatt, as he kind of comes out of the fog or the dark, and it is him, in fact. And man, the pop of the crowd was just incredible. Like if people didn't understand how much of a mistake it was to let him go, to hear the roar of the crowd, knowing that he's coming back now, and knowing that he's coming back, for hardcore fans, the fans that really kind of follow the business as well, kind of like you and I do, sir, it is a huge promise to see him come back under a regime that may actually utilize him the right way. And so that is the return. But I will stop talking. What were your I know you watched it on YouTube, and you seem pretty, I think the term you used was you were pretty glued to it. So what was your kind of experience as you watched this?
It's riveting. I mean, no doubt. I mean, first and foremost, WWE has always done everything high production value. They started it back in the 80s, upping the production value, and you look at some of the old pay-per-views that like Brian Zane reviews and stuff like that on YouTube, and you watch pay-per-views of a similar vintage, and WCW or some of the other shows that would have these pay-per-views, it is night and day compared to what WWF and now WWE was doing at the time. They revolutionized it. So now, I mean, so from a purely a production standpoint, I was like, this is really good. And the way that they did it, I thought was really good, which isn't that surprising, but it's a lot. It says a lot about how much Vince managed to like screw things up that should have worked. That you're like, wow, not only does this look good, but I'm buying it. Like you're pulling me in, because I don't feel as much like this is just going to turn into some big joke or something, or some stupid sophomore thing that, old man Vince happens to think is funny. And then, I mean, even though what's going to happen, like when he comes out with that lantern, you're just like, holy crap, this has a shot now. Because I would really, and not that you're ever going to get a purely objective point of view, because even if Bray were to go back and tell you exactly like, oh no, I wanted to do this and Vince wanted to do this and that, I mean, you'll always have to then say, well, how much is he protecting himself? And you're probably not going to get the truth out of Vince. So you're never really going to find out like who was mucking up, Bray's original character and then the Fiend. You're not going to find out any of that. What I thought was really amazing is I listened to Uncle Corny, Jim Cornette, talk about his promo on the SmackDown following his return at Extreme Rules. And you know what? Uncle Corny liked it.
Yeah. Wow.
Like he thought it was the best thing on I think the way he put it was that was the best thing on a wrestling show that week.
Yeah.
Which is shocking for the man who doesn't like much of the north of the Mason-Dixon line. Is shock. I was amazed, and the guy who he's on the show with was blown away. I think.
Yeah,
like you what? But no, it's riveting. And the dude comes out and he gives a promo.
He said to Jim, wait. He said to Uncle Corny, hold on a minute. I need to go look out the window because I think the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse might be riding by.
Yeah. Which is not a lot of hyperbole.
No, it is not.
There is very little in professional wrestling these days that Uncle Corny really gets behind.
Yeah.
Most of it is like begrudgingly like, okay, well, this doesn't suck as much as the rest of the stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he liked it, I was like, okay, I think I'm, this is pretty well vetted. Like this is riveting stuff. And I also agree with Cornette. Like if they don't go into like this supernatural area and they can manage to tie it into like why are people fighting, what is the angle, what's the story, then this is going to be amazing because this guy has shown like even when with stuff stacked against him or even when stuff has been meddled with, it's still riveting. So if they could actually just point it in the right direction, I don't see why you don't now have a huge creative asset.
Right.
And some really fascinating possibilities. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about the promo he cut, the SmackDown after he came back. And I really love the way, and again, I got to go back to Jake the Snake Roberts. One of the best feuds he was in was when he and Ravishing Rick Rude were going at it, and they brought Jake's wife into things, and it kind of blended those lines between the personal and the professional, and or brought fake and real together in a way that again, I don't remember which wrestler said this, but talking about that feud, saying what. Or I think it was Jake himself. He's like, what guy isn't going to connect with and understand another guy, messing with his wife, and what emotions he would feel and all of that, so he, like, again, just bringing the real and the fake, to I don't mean to say the fake, but the real and the fiction together,
mm-hmm.
to blur those lines and help engage the audience probably more so than they normally would have been, was brilliant. And he cuts this very earnest promo where
mm-hmm.
you feel like this is not Bray Wyatt. This is, I think his name's Wyndham Rotunda, I think is his real name. And, you get the sense this is kind of the real him talking. He talks about losing a couple people, Luke Harper, who is one of the original Wyatt family, passed away a year and a half ago. From a health issue. And so, he lost a very close friend of his, and he must have lost another one. And he talks about that loss, and he talks about people, connecting with him. And so bringing that in and really hitting that emotion, I mean, it was such a very, and maybe that's one of the reasons Cornette liked it, was just how genuine it was. It just felt like a very genuine human statement that he was making, but doing it in the context of the story. And then it was a great, like, I thought it was great that they just kind of cut it off, and all of a sudden you just have this like freaky looking person in a mask who is just talking about all of the pain and all of the chaos that he will bring. And, as one commenter I noticed on that YouTube clip, posted about, it's like their basic message was, this was brilliant. You have Wyatt thank the audience and actually, blend some of the reality in. And now you see the character descend into madness. And I'm like, absolutely. That is the Bray Wyatt character at 110%. So
yep. No, I'm anxious. I mean, like, honestly, I've been enjoying some of the clips I've seen and from the news I've read and things like that. Like, I am about as close as I have been to not to getting my Peacock subscription back, and so also looking into getting like Hulu or something like that, where I can get live TV so that I can watch Raw and SmackDown, because that is the one thing that absolutely just makes me so livid about Peacock, is the fact that, oh well, yeah, you can watch the reruns of Raw and SmackDown, but it's like 6 months ago. Like, there's no way that you can like even be like a week behind or 2 weeks behind. No, it's like no, those are all way in the background. So you kind of need 2 subscriptions, which kind of stinks. But I'm about as close as I've been to upping my game and actually starting to watch professional wrestling again in real time, which is something I haven't done.
Does this mean we may bring back a staple of the Free Range Idiocy brand, which was every so often we would do a pay-per-view review?
At this point, yeah, because it actually seems like WWE has their stuff together and are putting together compelling TV and compelling stories.
I hear you.
And all of that. Like, cool. And I kind of toyed with it a little bit with AEW, but it was something about it that just, I was like, man. And now we're kind of seeing the AEW's flying apart at the seams. Like, yeah, there's something to that. But with WWE, I just need a little bit of a nudge right now. That's all I need. And I have a feeling that it's going to come real soon.
Yep.
I don't know what it is, but I think it's going to be soon that I'll be like, okay, fine. Here's my money.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I feel the same way. I mean, you go back to WrestleMania back in March, the only thing I was interested in seeing, and this was after the fact, was the debut of Cody Rhodes. That was and because he fought Seth Rollins, and Rollins is a workhorse regardless of who he faces, and that was a phenomenal match. But that is the opposite of what they should be doing. I as a consumer should not be thinking, well, I'll just wait and see what happens and then, pick and choose the little bits and parts that I want to see. Get me excited about the product. Get me excited about the characters. Help me know that at least 75% of that card is going to hit, my interest and engage me in a way that I'm going to want to see matches. Because it wasn't that long ago, you and I remember we did that Survivor Series one, and quite honestly, that was one of the stronger cards I remember seeing, because it involved NXT, it involved SmackDown, it involved Raw, and we saw a lot of really good matches take place. Not all of them, but a majority of them were really compelling and really good. And they just kind of fell away, from that. I mean, obviously COVID impacted a lot of things too, but yeah, now that they're kind of back, creatively in a place where, there aren't a bunch of like the game has changed, and I don't say that, tongue in cheek because of the Triple H moniker, but the game has changed because the rules, there was almost like a constancy with what Vince would do. You would know at some point they would drop the ball, or at some point they would limit a character because Vince likes the big guys. Vince likes this, Vince likes that. Or
just the fact that tag team wrestling would just, like Vince hates tag teams, and yet he would always, it would just mess with these tag teams. Yeah. Now they seem to be building that.
But Triple H is someone, and I saw this in NXT. I mean, I watched a lot of the old NWA and WCW when I was a kid growing up, and he clearly did too, because there are a lot of elements that he's drawing from, not necessarily going back to the old school ways, but just taking those compelling elements from the old school and bringing them forward and doing them in a way where he's modernizing it and stuff, and just bringing, back a lot of like I think people want to see like characters who they can invest in, and if they're going to fight, like you were just saying, what is my reason for caring about these two characters or these two teams fighting one another? Getting back to those basics is huge.
Yeah, Paul Heyman described it beautifully. Who are these people? Why are they fighting? And why should I buy a ticket?
Right.
That's it. And ultimately, that is, and it's why I think that, even people who want to dismiss professional wrestling and all this, it is the same methodology of storytelling that you see in movies and in TV and all that. It's microwaved and it's centered around, meaning it happens a lot quicker than it does in other formats. It's the same thing. I mean, it's using wrestling as kind of the genre, but you're telling stories. And it's character driven, and it has to be, and that's why you doink around with enough of these gimmicks and the characters. After a while, you don't care. Because why
Yep.
should I care? I know you're gonna completely mess with this character. You're not gonna respect them, and you're gonna disappoint me. So I'm just not going to be invested.
Yep.
And that's horrible. Now they seem to have a little bit, go figure. You put someone in who isn't, senile and who actually, even though he's, DX is always sophomoric, like doesn't seem to, need to have everything be like the equivalent of a fart joke.
Yep.
It's kind of nice.
One of the things I read based on DX coming back for whatever Raw celebration there was the last week or two ago, basically said it was the perfect amount of what it needed to be.
Yep.
They came out, they did a little of a bit, but they didn't overdo it. They didn't overstay their welcome, and you came away just appreciating it. Like it was like just enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you just hit on what the big difference is between these two eras now, is because I think there's Vince may be a very, brilliant man when it comes to business and wrestling and so forth, but at his age, he's disconnected from culture. He doesn't know what really gets people going. And I think to some degree, now Triple H in the position he's in, I think he knows or has a good sense of what the wrestling audience wants. I think he's wise to the things that worked really well for AEW last year and what worked for AEW over those growth years that they had. And he's going to start doing those things. Mm-hmm. And people are going to start taking notice, because now, in a year's time, from the time CM Punk debuted to now, we went from AEW could take down WWE and be a powerhouse to now, wow, there's a lot of guys who might want to jump ship because WWE is starting to look a whole lot better now. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but it's very promising that they brought Wyatt back. Really enjoyed how they brought him back. Really enjoyed his debut, promo and the way he's kind of setting this up. And it's great. They're taking their time with it. Week by week, they're going to start, just slowly, drip by drip, really kind of revealing where this is all going. And I have full faith that they're going to, really pull, something really amazing off with this, because quite honestly, if they screw the pooch on this one, I don't know what more, this poor guy's going to be able to do if they don't know how to manage it. So, but like I said, I have faith in the new regime. They're going to hit it.
Does this mean it's time to play the game?
Time to play the game. Oh, never mind.
Oh boy! All right, from one combat sport to another. What was the other thing you're promising us here?
Yes, sir. Well, we're gonna do, as we have over the last couple episodes, a little bit of a trailer watch and discussion on a gem that popped up this past week. I forget exactly how Uncle Todd phrased it, but I think we'll just default to the Ron Simmons damn.
Pretty much,
because Creed 3 official trailer came out this week, and it is looking very interesting. Before I say anything more, why don't we go into the watch aspect of this, and then we can talk about our respective reactions to it after.
Yes, indeed. So the link is in the show notes. Go ahead and pull that up. As of right now, it doesn't have any commercials, so just get that all at zeros, and we will watch this sucker together. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready, sir.
All right, pushing play in 3, 2, 1, go.
Off we go. There's Adonis beating people up. Or if we're going to hear like Eye of the Tiger.
Doubt it.
I like how they're establishing, he's at equilibrium right now.
Mm.
That's gotta be Kang. Oh, whoops. I gotta say, it's kind of interesting. What's the actor's name? Jonathan Majors.
Yeah.
He plays really unsettled people very well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like this dude here, he doesn't look like everything is quite connecting.
No. I'm kind of wondering too if this is going to be kind of like Rocky 3, where it's going to be that eye of the tiger thing going.
Yeah.
The man who's been comfortable versus the man who's been struggling and hungry.
Yeah.
But it's going to have a different vibe to it because it's going to have that personal connection as opposed to it just being like, you know, what Mr. T and Rocky were.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I noticed when I watched this before is, and tell me if you agree or not, is I think there's 2 matches between them. Because you see Adonis in dark shorts and then you see him in white shorts. And so I'm wondering, like I said, if it's going to be like that Rocky 3 sort of deal. He's going to get his clock cleaned and then he's going to come back.
Yeah, because Kang there's got his he's got the titles.
Yeah. Yep. Which is okay. I mean, I can live with that kind of. Oh man, that looked amazing.
Oh yeah, I love how it's Creed 3 on 3/3/23. I know that's like it's
you have no reason to not know when this is coming out. It involves a 3.
Yeah, it's a silly thing, but I appreciate it.
Oh
no,
gosh.
that looks good. I mean, and let me just kind of couch this. I am not expecting this to be, you know, Citizen Kane or anything like that. Like Citizen Kang maybe, but it's not going to be like. I'm not judging this as like fine cinema. This looks like it's going to be a good story. It's going to be a good Rocky story, you know, Rocky-esque story, and it's going to hit. It seems like it's going to hit all the notes. So I'm down for this, and it looks like it's going to be, you know, well done. You know, yeah, it seems like it's going to follow somewhat of the beats of Rocky 3. I kind of wonder if we're going to get Sylvester Stallone in this. Is he going to play kind of the, you know, the guy that in the same way that, you know, Apollo kind of gets Rocky back to get that eye of the tiger sort of thing, or I don't know, but I'm in. I mean, totally. I think Creed 1 and 2 were really good. Yeah. Especially Creed. The first Creed was amazing. An amazing take on that, and then taking it in a totally different direction. So I'm down for it. What about you?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I kind of feel like they're bringing in beats from like Rocky 5 with, you know, him taking, you know, his friend in much in the same way Rocky took in Tommy Gunn, and then, you know, kind of creating the monster and the monster turning on you. And then, like I said, I feel like it's in some ways like Rocky 3, where, you know, it's that story of, you know, being at equilibrium, being comfortable versus, you know, really having nothing and you know, just having nothing to lose. And so you throw everything into the fight that you're going into. And so, you know, I think those themes will probably be explored. So it may not uncover or break any new ground, you know, in that sense, but I am curious where it's a more personal story. If, you know, there's details that we just haven't seen from the trailer, that we get when we watch the actual movie, that will maybe give it some more depth and maybe enough of a separation from Rocky 3 where it isn't a complete clone of it. You know, I mean, I think like any of these stories, right, your protagonist is going to have to suffer something. Otherwise, what is the engagement part of this for the audience, right? If Adonis goes in there and just mows him down, it's like, what is that then, you know? But if Adonis is struggling with something and, you know, working through that and, you know, this, like his trainer was saying, like letting the past be the past and moving forward, there must be something in there that is going to bring some heart and some depth to it. And so, I agree with you. I mean, the Creed 1, phenomenal. Creed 2 was amazing as well. Really enjoyed the fight sequences in Creed 2, honestly. I mean, Creed 1 had good ones as well, but I just felt like they're bringing an intelligence into the fighting. Like, even though these guys are landing way more punches than what you'd normally see probably in a boxing match, I think they're bringing some intelligence into the fight, and strategy into the fight that may have been lacking in past Rocky outings and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm super excited. And yeah, like I said, Jonathan Majors, whether it be the man who remains or whoever this new character is, which is not Clubber Lang's son, thankfully.
Yeah, I was a little worried about that. I'm like, oh, come on. No, don't.
He's going to go and slay all of the sons of Rocky's past.
Oh, my gosh. Please tell me it's not like, it's not like,
gosh,
Phil Lang or something.
Yeah.
I don't
Phil C.M. Lang.
Oh, geez, that would be rough. Oh, no, let's not do that. Let's not do that.
Dear. Oh, dear. Anyways. But yeah, point well taken.
Oddly,
sir.
now I do kind of want to see that movie. Like, damn you!
Well, you said Phil Lang, so I thought Phil Brooks, and I thought let's bring the CM Punk thing in. So why not?
It's a very strange movie. It's the son of Clubber Lang who is converted to Judaism.
Oh my God!
It's that old what was it? The old Billy Crystal bit where he imitated Muhammad Ali, and he's doing an interview with Howard Cosell, and he's talking about, I have new religious beliefs. I've converted to Judaism. I want to be known as Izzy Iskowitz.
That's right.
I am the greatest of. How do you put it? I am the greatest of all.
No, he's like, I am the greatest of all.
Yes, I am the greatest of all time. That's right. That's exactly how it goes. Oh my gosh.
Oh, well,
yeah.
March 3rd.
Maybe that could be Creed 4. Maybe.
There we go. There we go.
Good.
All right. Well, that, my friends, is a combat sports oriented week in Geek.
And once again, Tim just taking over the show, just taking it over, pushing that boundary.
42 minutes, ladies.
Jeez. And if anyone's still listening, going, I thought we were going to talk about Star Wars.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, they just flap their gums about
one more thing about no, I'm kidding.
Wrestling,
Yeah.
and then about fake boxing. It's great.
Oh my gosh!
All right, so we are now, as of this recording, episode 7 of Andor came out this past week, and so I just managed to catch up over the weekend, and we're going to kind of go through this thing, and it seems like you've got some thoughts here. You have some thoughts on this, but for those, you know what? I don't even know how, if you don't know anything about this character or about this, kind of where this sits in the overall story of Star Wars. But I love how at the first episode they use the same time measurement that a lot of people are using now, or a lot of Star Wars fans use of before the Battle of Yavin, and after the Battle of Yavin. Like, they use that as a marker of like to set it in context. And I'm like, wow, that is kind of cool. That like that is the thing. And they did that at the beginning of this show, which in the first episode, which I thought was really kind of cool. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is definitely like, okay, this is for you geeks. Like, here it is. You better like it.
Yep.
But yeah, no, this is it's great. So this is a prequel. It is a prequel to the prequel. If you really think about it,
it's the man who was looking for the man.
Exactly, the man who's sitting next to the man who's sitting next to the man who's sitting next to the man next to the man. Yeah. Oh, Robin Harris, I miss him so much. Anyways, so Rogue One, of course, being essentially, episode 3.5,
basically.
Really?
Actually, more like 3.75 at this point. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, it takes you right up to episode 4.
Rogue One's like 3.9. So
yeah. So this is a little bit before that, but also sitting after the events of episode 3. And I really dig this, but I want to hear your thoughts on this, sir. Why don't you take us into where you want to kind of head with this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to start with, so you already mentioned it's a prequel to Rogue One. So
I just love how we're popping seltzers like crazy here, and people are thinking like, oh my gosh, they're getting house. No, we're just getting carbonated. That's all.
It's all fizzy water.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So from Rogue One, the character of Cassian Andor, as find my mouse here, as portrayed by Diego Luna, really. So much good came out of that Rogue One movie in terms of just the storytelling and how the audience connected with the characters. I love the fact that they're going back and doing, kind of a in-depth look at, his coming to be as a character, or coming to be as who we find him in Rogue One, which also involves, really understanding how he becomes part of the rebellion. And as we're releasing from these first 7 episodes, how the rebellion is coming to be itself. And, for maybe some folks who are not as diehard fans, maybe it's not as exciting, but the kind of depth they're going into, and the sort of depth we're getting from the galaxy, as we see different settings from the different characters and what they're experiencing and what they're going through. This reminds me a lot of episode 3, season 1 of The Mandalorian, where seeing him do that mission to get the child out of the clutches, of the client, or whatever his name was at that time. Seeing him as a bounty hunter, using all of his tools and doing things like that level of detail is what I really enjoy and geek out at. And when you take the action part of it and combine it into a strong story, that is also weaving in the story of how the Empire slowly starts to build in terms of it's basically tightening its grip on the various systems and so forth. It just becomes a very compelling story. And so I like a lot of aspects of it. The cinematography is amazing. I have an article here about, how Andor did not use the volume. So I think a lot of the shots are all, real, kind of taking a step in a different direction, and just using real scenery, real locations. And it comes through, and there's an element of, when they started using the volume for The Mandalorian, I don't know if it was my lack of trained eye, or if maybe they just had, more money where they could, kind of hide things better. But, this last time with Kenobi, when we saw, there were certain scenes that I saw that I could kind of tell were in the volume, and now I'm starting to be able to tell them, apart from what reality would look like. And, so I don't know if that's a budget thing or what it is, but you can see the grittiness and rawness of these settings. It lends some realness to it. It also, helps kind of set the tone and, the mood for what's going on, where a lot of these civilizations are now oppressed and are feeling the oppression from the Empire. They're just making a lot of things really tangible through little details, like the cinematography and like the music. Music is very Blade Runner-esque at times, which I absolutely love. I'm a huge fan of that movie and what that movie represented for science fiction at the time in the early 80s. And the fact that they're kind of, not to the point that they're turning Andor into Blade Runner or anything like that, but just it separates the series enough from past Star Wars lore that it gives it its own unique texture and feel, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, totally. No, because I felt that way about Rogue One, honestly.
Yeah.
Even though it does nestle into and in between all those stories, it has a very unique vibe to it right from the get-go, that I was like, this is not like any other Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
It manages to fit while also having a completely different personality, which I think is one of the reasons why it's such an extraordinary movie.
Absolutely. And, so getting into it, I mean, but before we, I guess, get into the specifics, just in general, I'll just give you my thoughts of, I really like the way they're structuring the episodes. I feel like we're getting these 3 episode arcs where you have some setting and character and character interaction being established in episode 1. You have a build up to basically the climax that comes in the 3rd episode in episode 2. And then you actually have the playing out of the climax in episode 3. And so you see that with the first 3, Casa, that would be me, and Reckoning, with Reckoning being, basically the the security group coming in and trying to find Andor and arrest him, and it turning into this massive, mess of a battle with people getting injured and killed and so forth. And then you have Aldhani, the Axe Forgets, and the Eye, which are all basically building up to this heist, which, my interpretation of that heist, and I don't think it's too far off from what I think it's meant to be, is we're starting to see the real seeds of the rebellion coming to be, because the money that gets stolen is essentially going to now fund the rebels. And so, so you have, again, in Aldhani, you have characters, connecting with Andor that he is not aware of, getting to understand them. In episode 2, you get the build up toward what they're going to do, the training for being the Imperial imposters, everything around that. Then you get to the Eye, which is the build up and the climax of it. So now with the announcement, now we're getting some more chess pieces kind of laid out with, Mon Mothma, kind of tapping into her lifelong friend, in terms of her ability to get at her funds because she can't publicly do it anymore. All of these things come together to build just some great detail and depth into the story. And it feels so different from Mandalorian because it's like, I feel like the story has now layers to it. You have Andor's narrative that we're seeing play out. You have Mon Mothma's narrative of what she's trying to do in conjunction with Luthen. And then, you have kind of the whatever the storyline of the 3-episode arc is playing out, as all those things are going on. And unlike Mandalorian, where, I'm not saying Mandalorian's one dimensional, but I just, Mandalorian is him and the child going and doing something or facing something. And there isn't really another track to it. You know what I mean? Like there isn't another narrative track that's really going on. It's really focused on him and what he's out, trying to accomplish. So this just has such a different feel because I feel like there's depth now where there's multiple kind of narrative streams going. But I will stop rambling. What are your thoughts, sir?
I agree with you there. And also in that it's not a bad thing. It's just the way it's set up. The Mandalorian is focused. I mean, it's called The Mandalorian. Singular. It's this dude and it's his adventures with the child and everything is from that point of view and it's focused on him. Totally makes sense, totally warranted, and it fits. And yeah, you add in some of those other tracks, but really it's always those tracks with how they relate to The Mandalorian. This is a much more of a show, sort of like what we talked about with For All Mankind, with it's a larger cast with with stories running parallel to each other, sometimes intersecting, diverging. So there's a lot to keep track of. It's just a different kind of show in the same way that Rogue One was just a different kind of movie. And it's not that it has to be better or worse or anything like that. It's just different. And I like that. I like that a lot. I did find that article that and I'll post it in the show notes about them not using the volume for filming, and it's one of those things that in the article it pointed out something that's so kind of foolishly obvious that I'm a little ashamed that I didn't really think of it beforehand. But it's not the first thing you think of, just because we think of technology being so ubiquitous everywhere and just being able to, we'll fix it in post. You can CGI that. You can do, and you forget the fact that there is entire processes happening with all this stuff. There's people who actually have to do this. It just isn't a magic button. And I ought to know this because, doing graphic design, it feels like sometimes people are just like, just press a button and the whole thing happens. I'm like, no, that actually takes me hours to do that and to build all that and to fix it and do it that way. But they had to make that choice before they even started shooting. You're either going to use a volume or you're going to build sets and you're going to do exterior shots and all this. Like you can't do both because it's two completely different production runs. And I was like, totally makes sense. And in fact, to me, this feels a lot more like, and people are going to love this, it feels a lot more like The Last Jedi. in terms of like visuals and things like that, because it is big, wide open, visuals, especially all the stuff in Scotland that they were the last kind of 3 episodes when they were on that planet. So much reminds me of like the shooting on in Otto, because it's the same part of the world. I believe that Luke's island is off the coast of Ireland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So all of that stuff, like it's beautiful, and I'm like, oh wow, this is, again, it just makes it that much different. And I am really digging it. I think it is very interesting the way that they are doing like these little 3-episode mini arcs. Because when they said, "Oh yeah, the first 3 episodes are dropping," I was like, "Man, that is an odd choice to drop 3 episodes as your debut." As I was watching those 3 episodes, I'm like, "Oh, this totally makes sense why you would do it this way, because it gives you that first arc, and then you're like, oh, well, cool. Now I want to see it." It's almost like if you were watching WandaVision when they debuted the first 2 episodes, you kind of needed to see how that was going to play out over the next episode, back to back, and then you're like, okay, now I've got it. I get the gimmick with this show and what we're going to see probably next week, and carrying that sort of like boosting the going up decades each episode for at least the first, what was it, 5-6 episodes. That was helpful, the way they drop you the 2 episodes. This was helpful because it made sense then. I'm like, oh, I totally get why you would drop 3 episodes, because now we're showing this. And then we got through watching episode 7 yesterday, me and my daughter, because my wife couldn't care less. She's like, oh, you're watching your Star Wars thingy again. I'm going to go upstairs and just ignore the fact that I live in a house full of geeks. And that's her privilege. Although during one episode, she's sitting there with us on her phone, and then would occasionally look up and say, who's that? I'm like, you know what? I'm not answering any questions. We are 6 episodes deep into this. There's way too much to explain. I am not getting into doing the background and my own commentary track on this. Like, you can go and read about it or watch it if you want. I am not catching you up because I'm a jerk like that. So it was kind of interesting, though, because we watched episode 7 and my daughter's like, I didn't really dig that episode. I'm like, well, it's all table setting. That's why. It's like, now we're setting up the next 3-episode arc.
Yeah.
I will say Diego Luna it's funny. Like he's really good in this, but yet he's not lovable. Like his character, like he's not making it easy to really like Cassian.
No.
Which is why it fits very much with like Rogue One. I did appreciate the fact that we get a very early parallel between Rogue One and the first episode of Andor, when we first see Andor in Rogue One, he just takes out that dude.
Right.
Like he ends up killing the guy when he's in all those, I don't even know what you want to call those stack things or whatever, but he just kills the guy and doesn't really think much of it. And in this episode, in the first episode, when he kills one of those guards unintentionally, at first, and then he ends up having to kill the other guy out of anger and kind of out of like necessity, it's a totally different vibe. And you're like, oh, we are definitely at the beginning of this guy's story, and now we're going to see the line between where this guy is starting now and when we encounter Cassian at the beginning of Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see how he gets there. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. I think, honestly, the star of this show is Stellan Skarsgård so far.
Oh, God, yeah. he is amazing.
So bloody good at just being able to do so many different things, and it's great. And actually, the actor who's playing Mon Mothma is also doing a great job of managing to convey a lot of different emotions and information very economically, I will say.
Yeah. And to kind of build off of that, I really enjoy like one of the details that they're bringing out. Sorry, we're kind of jumping into what's good, what's bad, what's ugly here, but let's just roll with it. But as you were saying about Stellan Skarsgård and with Genevieve, I think her name's Genevieve O'Reilly, I think, who plays Mon Mothma. Yeah. how great a job they do at helping you really kind of understand and feel the stakes that are going on right now. Like that first conversation she has with him as he like dresses up as that, antiquities dealer, and they go in his back room, and she's like basically telling him, she's like, listen, pal, I'm the one who's got my neck on the line here. If I keep pulling money out and someone finds it, I'm going to end up, being the one who pays the price for all of this, and really seeing like, I think not that we got a romanticized view of the rebellion in the movies, but we never got this level of detail. You know what I mean? Like we never got to see the struggle because that wasn't the point in the movies. Right. And so now we're starting to really understand, like, these are people who are experiencing a cost. Like there's real stakes to this. And if they get caught, they are probably going to die, and
yes,
there's just a lot riding on this. And I think they do a really nice job of conveying that, especially between those two actors and their interactions. I really feel like both I think it was in 3 and in 7, that that those conversations really kind of help set the tone of what she's contending with. And, and really it's funny. They're kind of like yin and yang, right? Right. Mon Mothma is concerned about, like in episode 7, it was really interesting to see, like, she is like horrified by the fact that he was behind the heist and what that's going to now mean for a lot of different systems, that people are going to start dying. And then you have Stellan Skarsgård as the pragmatist character who's saying, well, exactly. He's like, they've been slowly doing this to us. And now by doing this, they're going to overcompensate. And now people are going to understand what's been really going on all this time.
Yeah.
And yeah, people are going to die. And I'm actually planning on that happening, and it's going to suck. But what's worse, like letting us slowly die the way that we have been, or getting the truth out into the open so that, because I think like they haven't said this yet, but I think as the season goes on, one of the fueling factors for the rebellion is going to be the fact that people are going to start seeing how wrong the Empire truly is. And that is what is going to start channeling momentum into building out the rebellion into being this formidable force that, I mean, small, but formidable force that goes after and tries to, derail what the Empire's doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's tough to go through some of this because there's a lot to hold in your head at once, because when we talk about getting down to the nitty-gritty, the details, which are the things that I enjoy, I like getting into the idea of like, well, yeah, of course they're going after money. You need money to fund a revolution. That's got to come from somewhere. And there are definitely a contingent of Star Wars fans that don't want to acknowledge the fact that the original trilogy happened at a certain point in time with a certain context within the film industry, and also the context within the world and all these things. And now we're in a different context, and it's okay for things to be different in movies and TV shows now. Like people getting into, again, The Last Jedi and that whole thing on the casino planet and showing the arms dealers and getting into that. People are like, oh, boring and blah, blah. Well, it's like, but that's something that was never dealt with before. And we can deal with it now because we've kind of shown enough of this. Like, yeah, they don't get into, and people, oh, they didn't get to that in the original Star Wars. Well, no, because that was a reaction to the movies that were going on. There was a lot of gritty movies that were happening then, and it was all, and George Lucas's version of this story was like, no, I'm making this as fun and like an old Flash Gordon serial and this and that and the other. It's going to be kind of simple.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we can get more complex, because if you're going to flesh out this universe, you kind of have to. And I really appreciate getting into that nitty gritty because it makes sense. It shouldn't just be this glorified, like, and we're doing this and we're doing that. And oh my gosh, and like, this is the confusion and the kind of concealed by the mists of time of what's happening to start this thing. And it's not neat and clean. Like there is, they're trying to do something, but yet it's also, you can go back to the history of the United States, even as people were working towards independence and they were so convinced that, the U.S. has to separate from Britain. has to separate from England. And there was people who were trying to walk a middle ground, and there's people who definitely didn't want to. And so you're going to have all this confusion until essentially you get put to a position where it's like, okay, well, we have to. And you're going to have people who are reluctant to even go along with that, but kind of have to acknowledge like, well, that's what we got to do.
Yeah.
Even though I don't necessarily want to, that's what we got to do. And I like how they're showing those different layers, and how you do have a guy like Luthen he's almost willing to be the Thanos in this. Like, I'm willing to do the stuff that nobody else wants to do. And yes, it's going to get more horrible and it's going to hurt people. Yeah, that's what I'm planning on, because ultimately I see this as needing to go there. And I'm anxious to see when we get Saw Gerrera in here, because that is another dude who is along those same lines of, I'm willing to do what is necessary, you know. Man, it does bring out a lot of different texture and a lot of different layers of that are not black and white. There's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of stuff in here that is going to be like, some of this is uncomfortable if you think about it and you really start translating it into our world. And it should be. You know, these types of things should be complex and should be uncomfortable. And I think that's what I really appreciate about it. It is a show that kind of knows what it is. And I love the fact that as I'm going through these episodes, I'm like, man, this feels like I've seen some of this before. Like, I feel like I've seen this visual palette before. The production designer, in reading the article that about the volume, or the lack of the volume, the production designer from this show was the same as the production designer on Chernobyl. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. And not that everything looks like, 1980s Russia, but it's like, I get it. Like, some of the visual language is there. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I mean, the cinematography, like the sets, everything they're doing is very, to me, again, it does the same thing that Rogue One did. It shows you something that you're like, okay, I get it. It takes place in this universe, but then it looks very different. You're getting stuff that is like, wow, I've never seen this in a Star Wars movie before.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that, because I want something different. I don't want episode 4 on endless loop for the rest of my life. I know that's some Star Wars fans like most earnest dream. It's not me. Like, show me something new. Like, I'm okay not having, Han, Luke, and Leia. I'm okay. Show me something else about this.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for this, and I do enjoy it, and I do appreciate the fact that it knows what it is, and it's not trying to be, episode 4. It's not trying to be The Mandalorian. It's not trying to be any of these other things. It is its own thing, and man, it's to me, it's doing a pretty damn good job of it so far.
Yeah. One thought, or one question I had for you with the episodes too is, did you like the way, like, I felt like episode 1, I think episode 2, probably 4 and 5, usually kind of the first 2 of the 3 episode arc, I felt the endings were very abrupt.
Oh yeah.
But yet I didn't mind it. You know what I mean? Like I almost felt like, if anything, it exposed the fact that I have been conditioned, or have watched enough, shows from this era, that I'm almost just like expecting there to be some sort of cliffhanger or something to kind of neatly wrap the story up. And, for that episode. And it was very disorienting when it happened, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, this makes me think about the episode more, because it is so just disconnected, and feels so disorienting that way. But I didn't know if that was kind of your read on it.
Yeah, there was definitely with a bunch of these episodes where it just ends.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I get what you're saying. It's not a traditional it's not a traditional cliffhanger as we're used to in streaming or even episodic TV. It's just like, and we're done.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa. There's like, no, it's not a tease or anything. It's just like, okay, and then this chapter is done. To me, it's much more of a traditional chapter in a book setting, because not every chapter ends with like a huge climax or a cliffhanger that is setting up. It's just, okay, now this thing is over, and now we're going to the next thing.
Right.
You know, and I did appreciate that. It made me kind of like, I've scrubbed through the end of every episode once we hit that, written by Tony Gilroy. I'm like, and I scrubbed through, half expecting the mid or post credit scene, and there isn't one. It's just like, no, it's the next episode.
Yeah,
that's it. And I enjoy that because, again, it's different from what we've seen. It's different from what we've seen from Star Wars, and it's different from what we kind of get in streaming now. Not significantly.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's revolutionary or anything, and I'm going to stop short of saying it's like the greatest thing I've ever seen for sure. But I do appreciate that it's different.
Yep.
It's different enough that it makes you go, makes you think about like what you've watched and what you're conditioned to watch. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. And like, I felt episode 5 was also another ending that it was abrupt, but at the same time, it really had some power to it. Cause that was the one where Stellan Skarsgård was talking with his, he was in his antiquities dealership, and he was talking with his assistant, and, they were talking about how there's nothing, he was kind of, just fretting, like going back and forth and finicking with things. And she's like, there's nothing more you can do. And he just kind of makes the statement. He's like, well, by tomorrow it'll either be dead or it'll be, moving forward, or however he puts it. And he just kind of stares off, and that's how the episode ends. And probably for some people that may seem like a logical conclusion to an episode, but it just like, it felt very abrupt, but yet it had power to it, because it was like this acknowledgement of, they're about to go do something. I have no control over this. And this movement either lives or dies by what happens tomorrow with what they do. And it just gave it like such gravity. I thought it was brilliant. I just thought it was such a brilliant ending to kind of get, episode 6 teed up for, just being excited for it and seeing how the story plays out.
Well, yeah, because in most of these scenes in Star Wars, we are right with the people who are in the action.
Yeah.
And you don't see that other side of it.
Right.
Yeah, they'll flash back to people listening to the battle or whatever. But most of the time, you're in the position of being with Luke or being with Han or being with whoever is in the middle of the fight. This is very much like going back to like Battlestar Galactica when Starbuck is injured and she has to plan the op, and then she has to sit there and listen to it unfold. And there's nothing she can do about it. She's done everything she can ahead of time, and now you just have to let it play out. And Adama is there like, this is how it goes, because he's an old hand at this now. He's like, I used to be the one getting in the Viper, and now I've got to sit here and, this is what it's like, kid.
Yep.
It's that same sort of vibe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
agreed.
It's not what you normally see in Star Wars. Normally it's like, it's Poe. Like, I'm going to go jump in a X-Wing and blow some stuff up. That sort of thing.
Right.
That's the perspective we usually have.
Yeah.
And in this, I mean, even though we don't spend a ton of time with Luthen, you're very much, Skarsgård does a very good job of making you feel like he is, his performance, and then also the writing and also the directing and everything else. Like, it feels like he is permeating in the different aspects, especially the arc with the raid on the base and all that. It just feels like he's there even when he's not there.
Yeah.
Like there's I think I've discussed it with you before, but the show Titus, and the very first episode of that, the pilot is called Dad's Dead, which, I mean, good God Almighty, that's an interesting way to start off your comedy show. And they point out in the commentary track, though, in most of the scenes are shot in this living room. And there is the door to the bedroom, the father's bedroom, in the background. Like here's the living room, and then a kind of an opening into a hallway, and then on the other side of that hallway is the door to the dad's bedroom, and no one wants to go in and find Dad dead. And so the whole story kind of unfolds for the most part with this door in the background, and they're talking in the commentary track, the director and the writer and the star, and like that door kind of becomes its own character. Like it's standing in for the dad that you're talking about through the whole show.
Yeah.
And in the same way, like some of the stuff that's happening here, like I really felt like Luthen was omnipresent in a way. over the entire thing, which was a very interesting vibe for the show, especially in that arc. And by the way, the dad isn't dead in Titus. Like, he comes back. Just spoilers, but I also want to make sure that people don't worry. I don't know why I care. I mean, the show is like 20 years old at this point, but still, I just wanted to lend a little comfort to our listeners.
Very nice. Very nice. What were your thoughts on the kind of the weaving of the subtle to the heavy-handed like oppression that goes on with the Empire? Like, we start out with this kind of microcosm, like when Cassian murders, or I mean, yeah, he does. He murders those two soldiers, first inadvertently and the other one purposefully.
Well, they're security guards. They're not even soldiers. They're just like they're essentially like mall cops in a way.
Basically, yeah. So not Empire at all. But I thought it was kind of interesting from like episode 1 now to 7, just like how things have escalated, and how we start to see the tightening grip of the Empire, and we see it in after episode 3. I think it was in episode 4 when the one character, I think his name is Siren Karn, the one who initiates going after Andor, and who is just clearly this sort of driven individual. Like, he is looking to climb the ladder and
mostly just to get away from his mom.
Oh my gosh, who?
Oh god! Like, yeah, I would have taken that chance too. Got to be honest.
But no, I thought the subtlety of it was great. Starting with, like you said, just kind of the security force for this planet, and then it just escalates into now the Empire takes over, and then once the heist happens, now the galaxy wide, they're enacting all of these measures now to basically try to stomp out any sort of hint of rebellion at all, and it kind of materializes in a way where much like we see with what happens with Cassian in episode 7, where he legitimately was not involved in anything. He's just trying to go to the store, and he just gets like completely bamboozled and kind of pulled over by this stormtrooper or this soldier who is just like, we're starting to see the ones carrying out the law are overextending their mandate, because they're trying to almost go too far in terms of what they've been called to do. And so I think they've done a nice job of kind of showing that subtlety at first. And then, like, there's a little bit of power and a little bit of, this sort of overextension of power. And now it starts to grow and grow and grow. And like Luthen said, part of it that's kind of part of his plan is trying to expose that. But yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on how they kind of like amplify that up over these 7 episodes.
I think it's great. I mean, I've said I am well on record at this point of saying that it's baffling to me with what we have been shown, both in all of the prequel and the original trilogy. How in the hell did the Empire take over the entire galaxy, being as absolutely incompetent and full of absolute boobs of officers? Like, how in the world did they take over?
Yep.
Well, now we're actually, we're actually getting around to seeing some of the competent and cunning officers of the Galactic Empire. Okay, well, now at least we're managing to retcon this in a little bit so that it makes sense of how they could take over. Because essentially after that, we just all we see is people who are bumbling around and they're idiots. At least now it kind of, the way that they're playing some of this, it makes sense as to how some of those things could have transpired, that they got so comfortable, so overconfident in their ability to do things. So I do appreciate seeing that, and also seeing the, like you're saying, going from, okay, well, yeah, you can handle your things. Okay, well, we're going to come in and we're going to take over. And then, oh, this happened. Okay, now we're bringing the hammer down. And then to see it carried out, writ large in terms of like, hey, and this is what we're doing on a wide scale, and then bringing it down to the personal of, Cassian, getting swept up into this thing, which is funny because considering he's also big part of the reason why all of this has changed. It's like, irony. Here come what is it? Oh no, here it is. The consequences of my actions come home to roost, that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
It is a lot of texture and a lot of nuance, and I'm enjoying that.
Nice. As am I. Let's see what else we've talked about. How it's a different rhythm. Let's see. Oh, one thing I want to ask you is is it at all? How do I say it? Not disturbing, but does it bother you at all that there really isn't a big bad right now? Is there?
It doesn't, because at this point, what they're doing, and I appreciate what they're doing, and it's the same thing that I appreciate when you have a good origin story, and the reason why Marvel has done so well at this is they managed to walk that line of okay, here's the stuff you need that you absolutely need to know, and there's a bunch of people who know more and they have more details, but you know what? We're going to give you some credit for intelligence and let you figure things out. What they're doing in that same respect here is a little bit different. They're saying, hey, we don't need to feed you the big bad right now. You know who the big bad is. It's the Empire. The Empire is the big bad. You don't need any more right now. We don't need to have the mustache twirling villain at this point. We already you're probably not coming into Andor stone cold, not knowing anything about Star Wars. They're kind of making an assumption there, and it's a pretty good one, because even if you don't know Star Wars, you kind of know Star Wars. You know enough to probably kind of I've heard and this and that and the other. They know that, okay, there's an emperor. He's out there. We've talked about him, but if you've seen any of the movies, he's out there. And there's just the Empire at large, though, is a good enough big bad to hang the story on for right now. I think it's great how they've done that. Again, to me, it makes so much sense, because you don't need it. There's no need to have that. They've got a couple people now who are sort of functioning as stand-ins for the Emperor or for a big bad, but they're really just kind of a more personal embodiment of the Empire.
Yeah, that's
just the big bad. And what else do you need, honestly? At this point.
Yeah. No, I agree. I like the fact that we're not getting. I know it's going to sound weird, but I like the fact that there isn't Jedi. There's no Force that is being brought into the story. And you summed it up best. I mean, the Empire is the bad guy, and the fact that this isn't Andor against someone. It kind of seemed that way in the first 3 episodes, because it was kind of him on the run from Cyril Karn and the security officers. But really, at the end of the day, Cyril is just, kind of a victim of circumstance, and Andor, once he breaks free and takes off with Luthen, that, Cyril's, we see Cyril, but we still I don't view him as this main antagonist to Andor. If anything, I kind of view him as almost like a parallel narrative that's going on where, at the end of episode 7, for example, the juxtaposition of Andor getting his 6-year sentence for doing nothing with Cyril sitting in this massive, analysis sort of farm pod thing.
Oh yeah, like a galactic office space.
Like a galactic office space was beautiful, because it's here are these 2 characters and they're both in prison. Just different prisons. And so I don't look at Cyril as an antagonist going after Andor. I look at him as this other character, and I don't know where they're going with him, which is another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I don't know what they're doing with Cyril at this point. I thought he was going to be this antagonist who's going to go after him, kind of like the Inquisitor was for Kenobi a little bit. But I like what they're doing with him, where he starts off that way. But I'm wondering, are they taking him in a direction where he's actually going to end up joining the rebellion too at some point?
I don't know. I've thought about that too. I have no idea. But again, that is what is nice, is that you're not just given like, okay, and this person fits this role and this role and this role. Like, this is much more of it. It is a spy thriller, and there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of shades of gray, and I like the fact that I can't guess where this guy is. I mean, I could, but I don't feel like my guesses are really going to be that good.
Yeah.
It's really just flipping a coin at this point where this is heading, because they haven't given us a lot of tells in this as to which direction he's going to go. So I dig it. I dig it a lot.
Yeah. And you get the sense too from his interactions with his mom, he's Cyril, I'm talking about, he's unhappy with his family. And it's funny because he and Andor seem to be like, there does seem to be that juxtaposition. You have Andor in episode 7 going back to his mother, who's basically like, you need to leave. I'm not going with you. Like everyone, I mean, she doesn't tell him this, it's his friend Bix, but everyone blames him for what he did. And it kind of reveals a little bit of short-sightedness on his part when it comes to the decisions he's making and the things he's doing. He's very in the moment, but not really planning for the long term, and understanding that his decisions do have ramifications. I think his trip to this kind of tropical place to kind of get away and have fun, I think is, really and then his subsequent arrest is really to bring home the point his mother was trying to say to him, to Andor, which is, you think you can run away somewhere and just kind of live your life. This is the walls are closing in. Like this is not going to be something you can escape. This is going to continue to ripple and grow and fester, and you're going to have to face up to it at some point. And then you have Cyril, who's, his mother is just laying into him, about, everything. And just about, his failure to dress himself appropriately for whatever Uncle Harlow has, or whatever his name is.
Oh yeah, because he's tailored. Now he wants to stand out.
Yes,
which is kind of funny because it is like she wants him to succeed and be successful, but you need to do it in a very conformist sort of way.
Right.
Like it is like this weird, like aggressive, passive aggressive nagging that it's like there is no way you're ever going to win. There is never going to end well for you.
Yeah.
And that actor is playing that so well, of just that, oh my God, this how did I get here? How did I get here?
Yep. Absolutely.
Hey, I need to take a bathroom break. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Two seltzers and a tea. Just give me 1 moment here.
No worries.
All right.
You back?
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeedy. All right. Thank you, sir.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Goodness. Let's get into it.
Hey, just before we start, I don't have a whole lot more to go through, so I think we can just. I mean, I have a couple things we can chat through, but if we want to, do you want to just kind of wrap up soon, or?
Yeah. No. I think we've got this one nailed down pretty good.
I do have one funny thing I want to say about one of the characters, but
all right,
go from there. I don't know where we stop. I think we were pretty much done talking about Cyril, but
yeah, I think we're done with him.
All right.
So pick up wherever you'd like, sir.
All right. Let's see what else. I think we've talked about the episodes. I think we've talked about high points of the episodes. Oh, I did want to ask you your thoughts on the heist. I like that it wasn't an Ocean's 11 sort of deal.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it really was kind of a gritty, like I think they're doing a great job building tension as these characters carry some of these things out. Like these are not foregone conclusions. You know what I mean? And there's steps of process with these things that could go horribly wrong along the way. And I like how the characters or the actors playing the characters do a great job of showing that tension on their faces and in their body language as they do things, because yeah, I mean, it's just really, you know, I think sometimes when you watch, you know, the Ocean movies or, you know, the Bourne movies and that sort of thing, you just kind of come to a sense of, oh, this is how this is going to play out, you know, like, you know, Jason Bourne won't get killed here, and he won't, you know, because otherwise the movie's done. But, you know, I think when the heist happened, I'm glad they showed it in a very gritty way. I'm glad they showed, you know, there was a lot of money they left behind.
Oh yeah.
You know, like it wasn't like I looked at that, I'm like, how on earth are they going to rob that whole thing with the Imperials helping them? And sure enough, I mean, they got some of it, but it was not, you know, the entirety of it. And, and they paid a price for it along the way. You know, I mean, they lost three of their group. I mean, of course, one of them, Andor, shot in cold blood because he knew that he was kind of a scumbag. But
well, yeah, I mean, no one made it. The only two people who end up making it out overall are, you know, is Andor, and then what's her face? I
have the cast. Vel, yes. Cinta is also making it out, but we don't know quite yet.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, so she made it out, or at least she survived.
She's on her way.
Yeah, she's on her little scooter.
That's right.
And but yeah, no, it's not a neat and clean sort of, like, you know, and that's the thing with the Ocean's movies. Part of that is just the fact that it's the style.
Yeah.
That is one of those deals where it's like, it's not the destination, it's the journey that you're there to watch. Yes. And that's the fun part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do appreciate how there is a cost. It is not neat and clean. It is not everybody gets out and, hey, everything is great. Like, no, that there is going to be consequences, even though, which again helps you to at least appreciate the fact that there are some competent Imperial officers and Imperial personnel, because they don't just kind of make it out free and clear.
Yeah.
They get taken out. Like, the Imperials are competent enough to figure out something's going wrong.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And to do something about it. So yeah, no, it's, I like the heist. I like the fact that it wasn't a foregone conclusion.
Yep.
It was the escape is kind of interesting with the TIE fighters and all that. Oh my gosh, the TIE fighters on that planet.
Yeah.
Well, that was insane, seeing those fly around in the atmosphere.
Yes.
And just to hear that and to think about, okay, yeah, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Like that, seeing something like that just come cruising down on the deck like that and making that sound. Oh, okay, now I get it.
Or I think it was in episode 5 when they were in the middle of their training and they kind of, you know, like they couldn't get to shelter in time, and they thought maybe it would take a shot, and all the TIE fighter did was just like buzz the water and make a huge amount of noise and like just buzz them. What like that's a great point you bring up. Like, they are, you know, I think a lot of people who grew up on the movies look at TIE fighters as these fragile, you know, non-lethal kind of ships, and I think they're doing a great job of showing just how intimidating these things really are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and both in sound and in size and in what they represent. And that's a great call.
Yeah. No, I thought that was great. And, you know, again, the fact that there's a price to be paid, and then the fact that you get the guy who's trying to double cross.
Yep.
You know, and we now kind of see Andor getting more and more closer to the guy that he is in Rogue One, because he's just sort of like playing along with it, and all of a sudden just like, yeah, and you're done.
Yeah. Right.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, but still playing along with enough, you know, for those who are like, oh, this is Star Wars, it's still enough, because I mean, that guy totally got shot like 5 feet away from where everyone was, and nobody seemed to hear the blaster, which I was like, see, there you go. There's some unrealism to go along with the fact that nobody is wearing seatbelts. So just don't worry. It's still Star Wars. Still Star Wars.
Okay, so slightly funny thing, like right after he shoots that guy, I love how when he walks into the medical tent or wherever wherever Vel was to get that one character, you know, fixed, and they determine he's, you know, passed on. And the surgeon has like 4 arms or something, that when Andor walks in, like all 4 arms go up, like stick up. It was hysterical. Like I kind of chuckled at that. I'm like, all right, that's a really cool attention to detail there, to have like all 4 arms go up like that. Like I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, but at different times. Like that was
good. And then you just hit on something that I thought was really interesting too, is I love how there is just the seeds of deception and backstabbing planted both on the rebel side but also on the Imperial side. Like the ISB agent Deidre Mero, who is, you know, trying to understand like what is like she's on to what the rebels are doing. She's like, this is exactly what I would do. I would not scale the same wall twice. I would spread things out as far and as wide as I can to avoid detection. So she's like kind of trying to figure this out. And you know, I love the interaction in episode 7 where I forget the guy, but this one guy's trying to like do her in or whatever. And because of her, you know, motivation and what she was trying to do, she ends up, you know, getting his assignment and is rewarded for her ambition. But I love how when she walks out with the ISB director, he's, you know, he wants to have a word with her, and he's just like, watch your back.
Yeah.
Like that's all he says to her.
I do appreciate how like you that is one of the aspects of seeing like how comfortable the Empire is, and just also lending it this real cutthroat sort of edge of, you know, these meetings aren't so much meetings as they are like philosophical debates with this guy. Like it's like having Aristotle as your, you know, your group supervisor, and you know, he's just doesn't really care about dissent. He's using that to totally keep people on edge and all that. Oh my gosh, yeah, that was so good when he does. He takes her out and he's like, you know, watch your back, and that's it. Like, oh man, yeah, that's it. Again, it kind of gives you a little bit more insight, and you're like, oh wow, the Empire is more menacing.
Yeah,
than you've seen before.
But it also clues you into one of the key ingredients behind the rebellion, because the Imperial, you know, I don't know if he was a general or what he was at what was the name of that planet they were on when they did the heist?
I don't know.
One second. On Aldhani.
Yes.
I think his name is Gorn. Let me see if I can find.
Yes. Yeah. The guy who the colonel or whatever.
Lieutenant Gorn.
Yeah.
So he's helping the rebels because of, I forget if he was passed over for promotion or something else, but
he fell in love with a woman on the planet.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And then something happened to her, and now he ain't happy with the Empire no more.
Gotcha. Okay. So in his case, it was personal, but you can see how, with the way the Empire works and the backstabbing nature of it, is when someone is on the lesser end of the backstab, you begin to wonder if that's where a lot of like a lot of the rebels and a lot of the intelligence about the Empire comes from, you know, because you have all these defectors who are like, okay, they screwed me over. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go with these guys and you know, put the screws to them because they hosed me. You know, like you can start to see the seeds of that being planted through things like this Deidre thing that happens, because, you know, she of course is continuing forward doing her thing. You know, I don't think the guy that got hosed in the process is going to flip or anything like that. But if that environment is there, you can see how some people end up leaving and becoming, you know, like Bodhi was one of them from Rogue One, the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he breaks away. We don't know why I don't think we ever get a clear explanation as to why he broke away, but he clearly got disenfranchised with the Empire and just left.
Yep.
And so you just wonder, you know, as the season goes on, or as we get into season 2, just how much of that sort of, you know, environment that is being cultivated in the Empire really is its undoing long term, because so many people become so discouraged or disconnected or disenfranchised that they see then what the rebels are trying to do and want to exact, you know, kind of vengeance in their own way on the Empire for it.
Yep.
So
agreed.
All right, one last thing before we wrap this up, and for those keeping score, yes, we might actually wrap this up a full hour ahead of what we normally do.
Don't jinx us.
Oh boy! But just want to point out the actor Alex Ferns, who plays Sergeant Linus Mosk of the Security Corps, or whatever they're called. Let me find their name again here. Let's see, what are they? Pre-More Security is what they were called.
Okay.
He's kind of this bigger guy, and he's the lieutenant that kind of, you know, backs Cyril in his, you know, move to go after Andor down on the planet. And what was really striking to me was not only the uniforms, but also just how that particular actor looked in that uniform. For those who play Star Wars: The Old Republic, dude looks like ripped right out of that game, because they have some more burly looking characters in outfits just like that, where I'm just like, dang, that looks like one of the levels I played like on Alderaan or something like that, where you got some guy in a blue suit and he's this bigger guy and he's like looking, you know, he's trying to look for that promotion and be the aggressive, you know, go-getter, and you have to slap him around a little bit to, you know, calm him down. And anyways, I just kind of giggled at that, because both, you know, between Cyril and that character, they just looked like they were ripped right out of that game in terms of just their look, you know what I mean? And so that was just something that was a little funny to me, just a little kind of I don't know if that's what their intention was. It was a little Easter egg for me, because I'm like, man, I remember seeing that in the game like quite a few times, and so it was just kind of funny to see it, you know, kind of play out in the show. So
yeah, I'm trying to find that guy. Oh, here he is. Alex Ferns. You know what? I could have just searched for Alex Ferns. That would have been way helpful.
Well,
way more helpful.
That's all right.
Okay, that he isn't who I'm thinking of then. I thought that. Oh, is that? Actually, I think it is Glukov. He was in Chernobyl, and I think he was one of the miners.
Oh, really?
I think he might have been like the lead miner, because I was listening to his voice. I'm like, okay, that guy I've heard before. I've heard that voice before. I believe that might be it.
Very
cool. He was a favorite, because especially that moment where what's his face there? I can't remember his character's name, but the dude who gets henpecked by his mom.
Oh, Cyril.
Yeah, Cyril. Okay, and he's trying to give like the speech.
Yes,
you know, the rally speech. And it's like the worst motivational speech ever.
Yeah.
And then that guy there, Mosk, ends up, you know, applauding him. He's like, "Well done, sir."
Yes. Yeah, like he played the stooge part perfectly well. I mean, it was good. It was so good.
Oh my gosh, like just such a suck up. It was great.
Oh yeah. And then two final shout outs. We've talked about Stellan Skarsgård. Fantastic job there. Anton Lesser, who plays Major Partagaz, the director in the ISB room. He is from Game of Thrones. He played, let me get his name, Maester Qyburn, who was quite a influential character in that series. So it was very cool to see him in a Star Wars series. And then the character of Vel, one of the rebel leader on Aldhani, Faye Marsay is the actress. She also of Game of Thrones, playing the character the Waif, who fans of that show will know. She was kind of a sadistic character. So anyways, nice to see her on the good side of things for once. So
Well, I mean, I'm just glad that you got some tie back to your favorite little dragon and sword show there. That's
absolutely
glad that you can always,
which you should watch sometime.
No, I'm telling you, Jim, I watched like 2 episodes. It's not my jam. It's just not my jam. It's not.
Maybe do I need to bring back the fantasy football segment?
Go right ahead. You can talk about your fantasy football team all you want. I ain't playing. I have finally freed myself, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first year in I don't even know how long that I am not playing fantasy football. And you know what? My life is much the richer for it.
All right.
I am a happier person. I wake up in the morning and I'm whistling along with the birds. It's great. Everything I dreamed of and more.
Well, that's the most important thing, I suppose.
I suppose. Just because you can't.
Anything else on Andor, or do you think we've drained this rock as much as we can?
I think that we have. I think that it's a good show. I'm very.
Yes.
I'm actually. This is working out so well as a series because you wouldn't be able to get this type of depth with this big of a cast.
Nope.
In just a movie, and I think this is working out just the way it should.
Absolutely. Do check it out if you haven't. Of course, by now, if you've listened, we've spoiled about 3/4 of the first 7 episodes. So,
yeah. Well. Oh well.
But do check it out. Good show.
And another thing.
So, what have you got for and another thing this week, sir?
Well, to kind of go along with the Rebel versus Empire theme, I just finished a book by Malcolm Gladwell called David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. Very good book. Very interesting book about, kind of takes a look at the David and Goliath story, kind of gets into a little bit of the history of it. And just, kind of in a logical way explaining, how that fight could have gone down the way that it did and why, and then kind of then directing his writing into 3 parts, one called The Advantages of Disadvantages and the Disadvantages of Advantages, the second part on the theory of desirable difficulty, and then the third part on the limits of power, and really just kind of talking through different ways how in different situations where it seems like, the deck is stacked against you or you're dealing with a disadvantage, how you can kind of turn that around, and sharing some stories and accounts of people who have done that. One example from the book, and I think is in the first chapter, is, how this one, this father who, became a coach of a girls basketball team, and a team of girls who really didn't have much experience playing basketball, decided, well, he studied the game, he understood the rules, and decided, I think I'm just going to have him practice and train to just play the full court press the entire time. And by doing that, even though the girls weren't great, but he taught them defense and how to play defense, they actually ended up, being quite competitive because they played the game in an unconventional way. And that's kind of his point, is just like ways that you can kind of take situations, and if you study the conventional approach, can you find or identify the unconventional, to kind of, steer you in a different direction. So just a really interesting book. The third part, The Limits of Power, is really interesting, talking about, people who have, tried to exert power in a certain way to, drive toward a certain conclusion or direction, and how, that can go horribly wrong because, when you try to direct power in a certain direction, the way you do it and how you approach it, can very much derail where you're trying to go. And, using examples of kind of what was going on in Ireland between, Catholics and Protestants, and how, the British Army came in and the way they kind of handled it, and how it just kind of exacerbated the situation into a much worse, situation later on. And so just a lot of really interesting things to think about, and just kind of approaches to, just situations where you might be facing kind of a disadvantaged scenario, and how you can maybe think a little bit differently about it, and the ways that people have thought about it. So highly recommend it. David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants by Malcolm Gladwell.
Excellent, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And as luck would have it, I also am recommending a book this week.
Wow.
Dovetails very nicely with the themes of the Man They Call Tim's book, another very intellectual tome. It's called The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi, and I'm totally making the rest of that up. It is not. Well, you know what? Here, let me just read the little description here.
Please do.
So when COVID-19 sweeps through New York City, Jamie Gray is stuck as a dead-end driver for food delivery apps. That is until Jamie makes a delivery to an old acquaintance who works at what he calls an animal rights organization. Tom's team needs a last-minute grunt to handle things on their next field visit. Jamie, eager to do anything, immediately signs on. What Tom doesn't tell Jamie is that the animals his team cares for are not here on Earth, not our Earth at least. In an alternate dimension, massive dinosaur-like creatures named kaiju roam a warm, human-free world. They're the universe's largest and most dangerous panda, and they're in trouble. It's not just the Kaiju Preservation Society who have found their way to the alternate world. Others have too, and their carelessness could cause millions back on Earth to die. So, one, I was kind of fascinated by the fact that this book is the first one that I've really come across. Granted, I haven't been searching specifically in this direction, but it's the first book I've come across that places it within COVID-19 world, which is interesting. My first impression after I was about halfway through the book, I was sort of like, man, this is it's junk food kind of reading in a way. It's not meant to be a steak dinner. It's a cheeseburger and a French fry and a, large cola sort of meal, which is interesting because then when you get to the end of the book and the author kind of takes you on a little bit of a journey in the afterword about the writing of the book, you then get it. Like, oh, I understand why this book is the way it is. He had another book in mind. It didn't quite work out. And then he kind of just had this idea, started writing it, and it was just fun. And he's like, I wasn't trying to be, intellectual or anything like that. I'm just trying to write something that's fun that would take my mind off of this other thing. And that's how the book came about. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I mean, it's a fun ride. It's a quick read. I think I read it in a couple afternoons. It's not a huge tome. It's entertaining in its way, and it's fun sci-fi, and there's some interesting thoughts in there. And it's very economical storytelling in that it doesn't get belabored into describing every single plant and every single mechanism, which is one of the things that annoys me about some sci-fi writing, and especially fantasy writing. This is why I really cannot get into fantasy books a lot, because the world building ends up devolving into like essentially the Encyclopedia Britannica. Oh, I'm sorry. For everyone who's out there who listening, the Wikipedia. Gosh, I forget how old I am. Yeah, exactly. But it ends up devolving into basically a Wikipedia article or an encyclopedia article where it's just information after information just being shoveled into your face for chapters on end. I can't stand that. That is one of the things that this book does not do, and does very well. It gives you just enough information. You can imagine the rest, and it moves the story along, and it moves pretty quickly. And it works. It's
nice.
Not the world's greatest book, but you know what? It's a fun read. And if you're like me, where I had gotten stuck reading in my reading habit, where I hit a book, kind of a wall in the last book I was reading, and I was like, crap, I need to find something else to read. This was the perfect book to read because it was like, okay, I can get into this and just blaze through it. So it's a good book there if you're looking for something that's kind of just, you're not gonna have to, hinge your entire life on this thing for weeks on end. Like you can if you're a moderately quick reader, you can take this down in a couple days, and it's a fun little ride. It's not meant to be, War and Peace. It's a fun little ride, and you're done with it. I actually want to go back and check out some of this author's other books because he is a writer of some renown, and I'm anxious to see what his other books are like that are not necessarily written in the circumstances that he wrote this book. So I'm curious for that, but I do recommend the Kaiju Preservation Society as a fun little read, should you be interested in such that thing.
Nice.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to that time, and let me check the time. And yeah, we might just be able to tie this up in under 2 hours. Holy shnikes. Wouldn't that be a nice surprise?
Hallelujah.
But thank you very much for tuning in. We do appreciate it. Thank you to all the members of the Free Range Idiocy congregation who have chimed in here, who have come down to our little traveling medicine show, our snake oil sales pitch here on the outskirts of town. We do certainly appreciate it. If you have not been following us, you can go to freerangeidiocy.com and you can download all of our episodes there. You can also listen right through the Podbean app. You can also find us on various podcast services like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all of those fun stuffs. Just search for Free Range Idiocy. I'm sure that you'll find us. You can also find us on the social medias. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram, Twitter. No progress, but you know what? It seems like Elon Musk is going to buy it anyways, and it's going to go right down the pooper, so I'm not too upset about that. But you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Both of those are at Free Range Idiocy. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, or any ideas for a show, because you know what? We're idiots. We can only think of so many things. And quite honestly, if you want to change, well, send us some ideas. Send those to tim@freerangeidiocy.com, and we'll take them under advisement. As usual, Tim will be much more astute observer, and he'll actually put some thought into this. I'll just pick stuff out of a hat, quite honestly. I am neither proud. I just like listening to the sound of my own voice, if you haven't noticed already. All right, but now I'm going to hand this off to the least idiotic of the two idiots who run this show, but not before I ask the second most important question in all of humankind. The first, of course, being what is hip. The second being, what the hell did we learn this week?
We've learned the following, my friend.
Good.
We have learned that the word unimpeachable is a word, and it was used to describe my Star Wars prowess, which I very much appreciate, so thank you once again, sir.
I think it's prowess, not prowness.
We've now learned that it's pronounced prowess and not prowness. Thank you once again, my literary guide, Uncle Todd.
You've been ballyhooing too much.
I was just going to say, we have also learned ballyhooing is a verb and can be applied as such.
You're too tired from all your ballyhooing.
I am.
If you're not careful, you can go blind that way too.
You can't. You just got to be very careful. I'm
not going any closer to that one, folks. You all can ponder that all you want. Or don't at all. You know what? I don't even recommend pondering it. That might you get a rash.
I think it's safe to say that we have learned that the Free Range Idiocy gents here are very much on board with the return of Bray Wyatt and where that is all going. If you are a wrestling fan, you might want to check it out. Stay tuned and see where these good storylines are going, ladies and gentlemen. We've also learned Creed 3. It's going to be a little bit of Rocky 3, a little bit of Rocky 5, but not exactly a duplicate of either. So we will see. But looks like a very solid outing, March 3rd, 2023. Do check it out. And of course, as we've been discussing for the last hour or so, Andor, definitely check it out. It is a different rhythm, a different style, a much welcome kind of approach to Star Wars storytelling, and very excited to see where the back half of the season goes. We will return with a assessment, if you will, of season 1 once it is completed. I'll have to see if good old Saw Gerrera, when he comes out, has Boar Gullet with him, because he just likes to say that name. And apparently,
well, don't you?
Boar Gullet. But nonetheless,
Boar Gullet will know.
Save the dream. But nonetheless, we will be back with a recounting of season 1 once it is concluded. With all that being said, as we like to close things out, be safe, be healthy, be kind, be good to one another. And, just because it's good practice and a sound environmental approach, if you would please hit your lights on the way out.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking.
I beg your pardon, what did you say?
Sorry for the remote rendezvous, Mando.
You're such a disappointing pair. I prayed so hard for you. Get out. And don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
They all hate you, Mando.
All of you relax. This is a matter of inconvenient timing, that's all. Police action was inevitable. And as it happens, necessary. So let them fumble about outside and stay calm. This is simply the beginning.
Have you come to kill me? There's not so much of me left. I've ballyhooed myself to nothing.
Now get the hell out of here!